Good afternoon, everyone. Daryl Andrews here with a little insight from Coach D, the first Coach D and the original Coach D. I say that because there's so many Coach Ds out here right now, and it's funny how people will message me and say, "Man, Coach, I didn't know you ke- taught and focused on this or focused on that." There's some young guy on Twitter that's politically focused, and I don't know how folks can't recognize the fact that this dude like 30 years younger than me. So we don't look alike, we don't anything, but they still think it's Coach D. So anywho, um, we have been working with and training and coaching individuals worldwide for a long time. And so I want to share something with you today because one of the more significant pieces of our work is we work in the employment field where we do a lot of work in the space of workforce development. Now we do other areas, as many of you know, but our main primary area is in the area of workforce development. So, we do professional development, training, coaching, and in a variety of capacities in that space. But I'm going to share with you what people are saying to me, be it employers and a variety of people across the board are saying today about a need that's out there. Now, most of you and many of you have already heard of this already, but because we're hearing it so frequently now, I just think it's worthy of a conversation for a few moments before we all go out and do what we got to do here. But the area that I want to focus in on is this thing called you and I know as emotional intelligence. So some of you have heard of it before. Some of you have not, but emotional intelligence. And reason why I want to focus in on this is because I have an opportunity in my field to interact with a lot of employers. And of all the skills that employers are looking for in a person, the top skill that people really want to see is not a skill individually, but a multiple pathway of skills, I should say, are soft skills. The ability to show up to work on time, the ability to have the right attitude, the ability to be creative in your workspace and do things that are relevant to success and to have a sense of a great work ethic. All those things, um, employers are saying today more than ever they need it. And the reason why is especially post pandemic, it seems like people's response to situations are much more sensitive post pandemic than they were pre-pandemic. Other words, people, I'm saying, put in a nice way, that people have a shorter fuse post-pandemic than they did pre. So, my tendency to interact a certain way is really predicated on what's going on in that moment. So if somebody upsets me, I respond with anger. If somebody, pats me on the back, I may respond with joy. But my responses are pretty consistent. And a lot of times, the way we respond to things, this is important to understand. And most people never study this stuff, so they don't, um, and that is they respond to things a certain way because that's the way they've always responded. And this is what we typically do as well. We typically, all right, will categorize a person or persons based upon their consistent response to circumstances. So if they're attitudinal, we'll call them attitudinal, or if they're um motivational, we'll call it motivational, whatever it may be. But the reality is, looking on the side of not necessarily motivational, but attitudinal, when we start to categorize a person in that space, a lot of times they take ownership of it. You know what I'm saying? And so I see we got a LinkedIn user. I don't know who that is, but I'm gonna give you a little love. It says 100%. So if you make comments and I see them here, I'm gonna pop it in here every now and then because this is a really serious subject. And employers out there, if you're an employer, you need to listen to this and take this recording and share it with your staff. Or if you're in a, if you're a husband, share it with your wife, or if your wife, share it with your husband, because this topic has caused dismay and challenges in a lot of relationships. And that's just one's ability to control their emotions, the way they respond to situations and circumstances, you know. And I like what Pierre Campbell said. Pierre, if you're out there hearing me, you know what I'm about to say. But Pierre Campbell says it like this, and Pierre is a trainer and consultant that we do work together here. And He says it very simply, and this makes a lot of sense. That is my response is my responsibility. All right. My response is my responsibility. So the last thing we want to do is be quick to respond. That's when you're a person that's quick to respond to things, you're not emotionally putting yourself in check. You just respond because that's the way you've always responded. That's the way you've always done it. So you just keep doing it the same way, but not knowing, but that type of response may have an effect on people in the way they perceive you and the way you impact them. If let's say if you're a manager or a leader, or if you're just an employee working for somebody and you're interacting with people, we one of the parts of what we're going to talk about in a few moments of emotional intelligence is a term. If I'm like putting you through a workshop here, but write this down, called self-regulation. That's what Pierre's statement is all about. It's about self-regulation. And self-regulation is simply my ability to suspend judgment. Other words, let's say if you say something to me, okay, all right, and I don't necessarily like it, instead of me firing back at you, maybe I might need to consider the situation. Maybe this person that said what they said may be going through something right now. Or maybe this person, I know about emotional intelligence, so I understand self-regulation, but maybe this person has never, ever been taught self-regulation. So what they do is they continually do things because they don't have any intelligence in this space. They may be the smartest person in the world, book smarts. They may have a high IQ, but they have no EQ, none whatsoever. None. And I would dare say EQ impacts relationships more than IQ. That's noteworthy. EQ impacts relationships and interactions with people more than IQ. Because you can be the smartest person in the world, but you have no ability to interact with people with some sense of control of your emotions. And so we respond, we react, we treat people, we do things a certain way. And so emotional intelligence, and some people call it emotional quotient, is really was created by Dr. Daniel Goleman. And he has a book, Emotional Intelligence, and he has multiple books now that he created many, many years ago. And a lot of people have been through this training. But the reality is a lot of people have not applied it. Because the true success of emotional intelligence is what you apply and what you do. So I always share a story. I just shared it with a group of trainees earlier today because I was actually training on this, which prompted me to even talk about it here on StreamYard. I was sharing a story with some of my trainees earlier today because we were talking about emotional intelligence, about a young man I met one time at a Verizon, one of those phone stores, the stores. And this lady walked into the store that this young man was working in with an attitude. This woman had no emotional control. All right. None whatsoever, because she came in and she started ripping this young man. All right. All right. Young black brother. And just ripping him. And she was upset. She was in his face about this phone and blah, 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 blah. And all the time that this woman was ripping him, he sat there with his hands behind his back, staring at her from behind the counter. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. She hollering and screaming. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And then he said to her, ma'am, whenever you're ready, I can try to resolve your situation. But she had to let him know how she felt. So she digging into him and blah, 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 blah. And it was such an intense conversation that her 5-year-old daughter tapped her on the arm and said, Mom, he said he wants to help you. So the little baby heard what the woman was saying, the man was saying, but the mom didn't hear because she was why? Emotionally charged. She didn't come in there to rectify that situation. She came in there to rip that young brother. And finally, he was able to get her to some sense of calmness, not necessarily, she never calmed down, rectify her situation, and he gave her a new phone. She's still upset. And the little girl said, Mom. She just kept saying, Mom, I felt bad for the little girl. Yep. And I said, man, this little child is trying to train her mother on emotional intelligence. But the point I'm trying to make is that young man, I walked up to him after and said, I've never seen anything like that. I am impressed and I'm proud of you, because you had every right to get back at this woman for what she was saying to you in the manner in which she was saying it, but you kept your cool. And let me tell you something, you may not know this, but you're the one that had the power, not her. She was actually powerless because she had no control. You had power because you controlled that situation. That's emotional intelligence. That young man could have dug back into that woman, said, forget this job. I'm not letting somebody talk to me like that. But he knew in that moment that was a customer. He worked for the company and he represented Verizon well. I was impressed with that. And so what am I saying? Emotional quotient or emotional intelligence is the ability to be able to think about my mood, my feeling in a moment, and its impact on other people. See, it's not about me. It's about other people. So people will say things like, that's just how so-and-so is. That's how they are. The problem with that is, if so-and-so's way of doing things is detrimental to other people, they don't have, listen, they don't have the right to continually be that way and continually offend others thinking it's okay because that's just who I am. No, it's not okay because that's who you are. If who you are is continually causing pain and hurt to people, somebody needs to let that person know you need to get some sense of emotional control here, because you're always interacting in a way that's offensive and harmful. And people who have emotional intelligence will know I can't do that. Like if I'm a manager, if I'm a leader, if I'm a parent, it doesn't matter what it is, I can't do that. So people who have emotional, listen to me, you can always tell a sign of a person who has emotional intelligence and a person who does not. The person who has emotional intelligence is going to suspend judgment. They're going to have awareness of what I'm about to say, or how I'm doing this, how I'm interacting is going to hurt this person. I may feel good because it's who I am, but the reality is that person doesn't feel good because you just dumped on them. You made them feel insignificant, but you feel okay because that's who I am. That's not true. We got to, mostly intelligent people recognize that the way they are impacts the way other people feel. So I need to work on it. Now, does that mean I have to walk around being motivational all the time? Absolutely not. Does it mean I'm supposed to walk around being, oh, everything's fine, everything? No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to say is really a leadership thing. I want you to hear this. This is leadership. This is self-leadership. I have to understand in any capacity in life, and this is where employers are having problems, that the way I respond to situations, the way I interact with people, the attitude and the dispositions I carry are not just going to impact me, they're going to impact other people. And emotionally intelligent people are saying, how do I handle this in such a way that people are better off with after interacting with me than worse off? That's a whole nother level of leadership in person. And I'm talking about it because we trained on it today. I've been training on it for the last couple of days with some of my customers. And man, it's been an eye opener for many of them. I had one of them say today, this is one of the best things that they've heard because no one has ever told them this before. And they were saying how they typically react to things certain ways. And now I realize I got control of it. So this is going to be an eye opener for a lot of people out there. A lot of people say that's just who I am. I'm going to tell you with the truth. You ready for this? All right. I should charge you for this because this is good information I'm about to share here. No, that's what you became. That's not who you are. You become that through a variety of circumstances, upbringing, trauma, circumstances that may have happened with a person, things like that. So I become this way. That's where we make a lot of mistakes out here. We think Well, that's just who so and so is. No, that's who what so and so has become. I'm gonna show you why. What I mean. No two. You take a baby and you take two babies and put them in the crib together. They're babies. Let's even from a race perspective, black baby, white baby. Black baby gonna look and say, I don't want to be in the crib with that white baby. White baby is not gonna say, I don't want to be in the crib with that black baby. Where does that come from? Somebody taught them that. Think about it. The diversity thing I always talk about is really not as complicated as we make it. We've become something that somebody else shaped us into. So we now have this perspective in our lives, and those two babies don't have that perspective. They weren't exposed to it. And so they'll play with each other. They may get mad over a rattle and want to pull one out of, if it's a bottle, they may go to town over that. But they don't have anything against each other. We learn that over time. Or take those two babies. There's no baby that I think some of our personality is sort of shaped. I will say that. You can see different personalities in people. But typically a baby is not going to say, I want to grow up and be angry, attitudinal, and disrespect people all day long. I want to be this angry person that whenever I do something, the anger comes out and I'm going to treat people a certain way because that's just who I am. No, that baby, for whatever reason, becomes that over life with life circumstances. So if we can learn as a child and parents raise kids towards certain behaviors, why as an adult, we all of a sudden can't do that no more? Because we choose not to. And so emotional intelligence, what I'm trying to tell you today is, I may have to do 2 or 3 parts to this, is saying, I now am taking control over this. Just like I study the books to get intelligence quotient, just like I, educate myself if I want to become a mechanic or if I want to become some type of career. Now I'm going to educate myself on my responses to situations and what is my response in this particular scenario and situation? Why do I always respond this way? Why do I hurt so many people? Why do people say that I'm offensive? Because now you're studying, listen to this, not a book, you're studying you. You're studying yourself. And now what happens is you can now say, okay, like Pierre says, my response is my responsibility. And I have a follow-up to that, and that is this. This is something to write down because it's pretty powerful. I can't control what the person is going to say or do, but I can control my response to it. Don't ever forget that. And it's only supposed to be a 10-minute speech, and now it's going to go on to 17 minutes. But I can't control what a person is going to say or do, but I can control my response to it. That's a whole nother level of maturity right there. That's next level leadership. That's post-pandemic leadership. That's self-leadership, servant leadership, call it whatever you want. And it's been rare that I've ever seen leaders like that. I've seen leaders scream, raise their voice. I've seen people put people down. But to be under control and respond and accordingly to lift other people up with my actions and attitude, you see, that's a whole nother level of self-leadership. So emotional intelligence is something you need to study. The big part about it is, I'm not going to go into all the details, is self-awareness, self-management, and self-regulation, which leads to what we call impulse control. And impulse control is, a lot of times we respond based upon triggers. Somebody says this, I respond. So impulse control is, I'm going to control that trigger now. When so-and-so says something, like some people even know how to push your buttons too. They'll say certain things. But when these situations and scenarios happen, it's like I'm pre-programming my response. Man, I'm going to tell you something. That's not only beneficial to the receiver, it's beneficial to you. You find that you have less stress because part of emotional intelligence is called stress management. You know what I mean? Adaptability, all these different things. You find you have greater peace because now instead of getting upset about things that you normally get upset about, you don't do it anymore. Instead of people holding you out on a string forever because of the way they do things, you don't even think about it anymore. You don't have to. because you are now addressing one of the key areas of life success. That's emotional intelligence, man. If you're not emotionally smart, you go. I don't want to say what the opposite is. You emotionally, I'm saying it is nice, not smart. Now I'm telling you something took me a long time to figure out. And I think I'm still. It's always a work in progress, but I'm getting better at it because I realize most people are just victims of circumstance. They don't even know that the way that they're communicating is offensive, or they don't even know that they just hurt somebody. And then they get mad at the person because the person is upset at them because of what they just said or did. And they don't even realize that what they just said or did hurt the person. Emotional intelligence, you don't have to worry about that because you're not going to just say anything. You're going to think about what I'm about to say and how is that going to impact the person or people around me. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I wish the names would come up. Put your name in here because it says LinkedIn user. I love this comment right here. This is great. I love to understand the factors of the pandemic situation has impacted people's EQ. Yeah. How much does the current labor market from the perspective of the worker change the EQ dynamic? I love that question. I wish I knew who asked that question. Love that question. And thank you for saying this is great. This is let me tell you something. It has had significant impact on the labor market. Because here's the situation. Leaders today, Stephen, my man, okay. Thank you, Stephen. All right, I know who you are. Thank you, man. Stephen, this is a good guy right here. Great company. He and I are having some conversations about some things we're looking to do. We got a meeting coming up, Stephen. I'm looking forward to it. But it does, Stephen, because the reality is that employers who are trying to manage post-pandemic people with pre-pandemic methods are going to lose out. You see, they're going to lose out. I'm sorry, I hear my phone ringing, and but I can't get to it, so it's going to have to just ring. The thing about it is, today, if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to hire people today, you need to understand EQ and IQ, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. You need to understand the whole thing of post-pandemic leadership is about values. It's all about values now. It really is. And so I can't just have that old style of management where I just tell you to do something, get it done. No, not today. Not with what people are going through today. And let's say this, and I'll get ready to wrap this up. If you want to recruit and you want to retain, you better understand this. Because you may recruit, because we all look good, in the honeymoon. This is when you get into the marriage, when people find out who you really are. That's when they're going to start saying, I don't know if I want to work here anymore. This manager is this way. Or it's not just the manager. Some managers may hire people and say, I don't know if I want this person around because this person has no sense of emotional. I'm addressing this question by Stephen. All right. And so the pandemic has made people extremely hypersensitive. So emotional quotient, the reality is the emotional quotient, all right, part of this. And for you don't understand, obviously Stephen does understand EQ and EI. They're pretty much emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. The thing we have to understand is the emotional, if a person is not taught what I'm teaching right now, they don't understand this. So what they're going to do is they are going to respond in the manner in which they've always responded. But when you start to study this stuff like I have, it makes you a better leader. It makes you a better person. It makes you more appealing to people to want to work for or work with. But lacking this knowledge, you're just going off of the same level of emotions you've always gone off of. And if you were impacted by the pandemic, now it's like hypersensitivity. A person can say almost anything and you're responding to it because we're still dealing with the trauma of the pandemic. And so we do a lot of the training. We just did, Stephen, a training at NAWDP, the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals, well attended, on post-pandemic leadership, myself and Pierre Campbell. And we were talking about some of the traits of the post-pandemic leader. And I'm not gonna give them all out. If y'all want them all out there, you got to get us, bring us in to consult. We ain't gonna give all this. Stephen, I'm not talking to you. I'm just about the general audience. But one of the things we talked about, there were certain traits, and one of the traits was authenticity, where people today want to be led by authentic people who are willing to be honest with them. I'm having a bad day. I'm going through some stuff. I'm not perfect. I'm imperfect too. And so there's that relationship. So now that person that may be slightly traumatized may be able to understand that leader, because they're like, oh, that leader just like me. They understand this. And so, so I'm just saying that I want to have this conversation. I'm gonna probably have this again tomorrow sometime, but that's my website, coachdspeaks.com. You know, we need to get a grip of this. If you want to succeed in business, if you want to succeed in life, if you want to succeed as a parent, you need to get a grip of this. Because, like, for instance, you have a kid, your kid walks through the door. Now I'm going to talk about parenting, and your child just had something happen in their lives. So they're a little upset, they're a little angry, and they're displaying it in the house. And so the typical parent response is, this is the old school parent response. Who are you talking to? The old school used to say things like, boy, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out of it. I don't know. Nobody's ever done that, but they always threaten it to you. But post-pandemic, because our kids have been through a lot with the pandemic too, the response is, you okay? What's going on? You want to go sit down and go to Starbucks or something? Let's talk. Or I'm going to do self-regulation, suspend judgment. Okay. I know you're going through a lot right now. When I'm here. If you want to talk, we can talk later. You don't have to go fix it. You don't have to, do the parent thing. Like, why are you so attitudinal? And you just give them room and space to work through it. Now, what does that create? A child that wants to communicate with you. Not one that thinks, if I say something, here comes the lecture. Here comes the attitude. Here comes the response. They never asked for a response. They never asked for an opinion. They're dealing with something. So let them work through it. See, this is all next level thinking that only comes from emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. So that's all you got for today. If you need questions, message me. If you want to learn more about this, we're teaching this stuff. These are the kind of things we teach in our professional development. And we're doing a lot of post-pandemic stuff. And people are getting it. Like Stephen, I said, we taught at NARDEP. That was the most well-received workshop. People were taking crazy notes. It was packed around the rim in that place because people know this is an important message. And even our customers throughout the country that's getting taught this stuff, it's the same thing. It's kind of funny. You do a professional development. People are like, I don't want to be, why is my company making me do this? Then they be like, can I hear more? And come in attitude, and yeah, that's it. And somebody just said this. So I don't know who this is, but like I said, they're saying LinkedIn user. I don't know why names aren't popping up. But empathetic and authentic leadership, the key to retention. Yes, it is. If you're not this kind of leader, whoever you are that said this, fantastic. I'm just saying LinkedIn users. I don't know why it's not saying names. I'm going to tell you this. This right here, if you do this, you'll recruit and retain people. Everybody trying to figure out recruitment intention. We got some answers here. I know what it takes because people don't understand. They're still trying to lead like it's pre-pandemic. It's not. It's post-pandemic. And the world, here's the thing. I was doing some training with a bunch of CEOs, and they were saying, I don't laugh. I'm not laughing at people, but I smile because I deal with this stuff so much. I try to help folks see things. But this one CEO of this pretty significant company said, when are we going to go back to where it was? And I just smiled at him and I said, man, obviously you've had a lot of success in your company and things like that. I said, but if you're waiting for it to go back to what it was, you're in for a long wait because they ain't never going back there. It's done. The world as we know it, this country as we know it in the United States, the labor market, the workforce, leadership is changed. And if we don't understand emotional intelligence, guess what? We're going to have some struggles. I know I've gone a long time, but I got one quick story to share and I'm done. One of my mentors here in Delaware, And as many of you know, I'm in Florida and in Delaware these days. But um, the was a guy named Nathan Hill, and Nathan was the president and CEO of a company by the name of Discover Card. And I remember one time we had a meeting in his office over in Newcastle, Delaware. And man, it was one of those meetings, just mentoring. He taking the time. That man is so busy, he didn't have to take time for me, but he did. And we're in a meeting, and we're gonna have about a half an hour mentoring session conversation. I'll never forget these kind of things. This happened many, many years ago, but I'll never forget it. And we're having this meeting with Nathan, great guy too. Any Delaware folks out there, you know what I'm talking about. He's a good man, good man. I think he retired and moved out of the area, but he had all kinds of calls coming in and secretary, this and that. We went over the 30 minutes and we're just talking. And if he's out there and hearing me, you probably don't even remember this. I don't know, but I remember it. And um, and that's and so I'm nervous because we're 35, 40 minutes into this conversation of a 30-minute conversation. I know he's a busy man. He's running Discover Card, Greenwood Trust, and I'll never forget. It's like 50 minutes in, he finally said, "Okay, I got to go. I got people I got to meet with, things like that." And he gave me a hug and said, "Man, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming by." I said, "No, thank you." I said, "But answer this one question for me. You had all this activity going all around us, yet you had me sitting here talking to you with all kinds of stuff happening." I said, um, "How did you, as a leader, talk to me about that?" And then he said something that it changed my life. It made me really understand leadership. He said, "When I'm interacting with someone, in that moment, that's the most important person." He said, "Daryl, this is my everyday. You're not every day. I'm not interacting with you. So right now you're important. They can wait." Man, you don't know, boy, that thing lit my leadership fire up right there. Because I said, man, that's what it's all about. That's emotional intelligence. That's self-regulation. That's self-awareness. I don't have to go off on a deep end because I got all this activity going on around me. I can control it. And with that being said, any questions, reach out to me. You see, and realize if you if get, I'm gonna say this to you. I'm probably gonna get in trouble, but it's the truth. Get emotional intelligence as much as, if not much more, than intellectual quotient. Get EQ as much as, if not more than IQ, because you can be the smartest person in the world, but have no emotional control, and it just will destroy your life. It'll impact the lives of others. You won't be able to lead effectively. So take this seriously. It's something I've gone a half an hour. I normally only go more than 15 minutes with these things, but I'm gonna loop back around maybe tomorrow and talk about a little bit more, maybe certain components. But thank you all for your time. I hope this information was helpful. Reach out to me at coachdspeaks.com. Any questions, or you can also hit me up. Here. Thank you, Oscar. That's one of my dudes right there. Appreciate you, man. And make that your goal for next year. Don't try to get smarter, act intellectually. Get smarter when it comes to your emotions. God bless. We'll talk to y'all soon.